we had this really good rapport.
Yeah, it's true.
It wasn't a friendship, it was friendliness, but he was always really helpful. He was like, go and speak to those people over there. They've got a great story to tell. Anyway, fast forward to the South Africa trip, which was sort of seen as quite make or break for them because they'd had some negative headlines over the holidays. And actually, that trip was going really well. And we'd done Angola, which was kind of amazing pictures. We were flying around in these little planes with him. On the sidelines, he was doing that interview with Tom Bradby. They were kind of filming stuff for that, which, of course, ended up being their first kind of attempt at saying, we've had enough. Anyway, we were in Malawi, and I was a bit under the cosh because I had to do kind of a special to end off the week. So as he was about to walk past me, I thought, right, I'll do what I've done over the years. I'll just ask him a quick question. We've all done it, the dreaded doorstep. It was a terrible question. It was a rubbish question. I just sort of said, oh, why is it so important for you to come here? Big journalism here. And he looked at me and said, oh, well, just go and ask those people over there. And I probably inside thought, hang on a minute, I'm not going to leave this one. And I said, well, is that why it's so important for you to come here? And then he turned round and just said, Rhiannon, don't behave like that. And then got in his car and drove off. I felt like I'd looked like an idiot. He looked really patronising. Nobody came out of it looking good. Anyway, it all blew up with his team. They were livid. And then it was when we got back to Johannesburg, and it was in that evening that letter dropped, the 10-paragraph letter accusing the Royal Press Pack of everything under the sun and saying, look, we're going to sue the Mail on Sunday. So immediately I just realised I'd frankly kicked the bear, and I just didn't realise it at the time. But it
shouldn't
felt,
go around doing your job. That's the trouble, isn't it?
It just felt really sad at the time because I had this good rapport with him. And that, in a way, is why I'm hoping that we will see more of him. We will see him doing what he has always done best. He is brilliant with children. He is brilliant with people.
I think we're living in the past. I think that the 91% and the 75% are right. I remember on that trip, we were on the plane coming across, and I just broke the story that he was quitting the army, which he probably never should have done.
Yeah.
And I really think he should have stayed in the army as long as possible. And he was really chippy with me because he spoke to him and he goes, I said, what are you going to do next then? You know, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, you'll probably find out before me. And I went, oh, OK. I said, yeah. But then we had a reasonable discussion about, you know, about prosthetic legs for soldiers and what he was going to do. So he had a lot of plans, but I think that he's now turning into the new Prince Andrew. And I don't think, not in the respect of certain other allegations, but he's no longer the young, fun 25-year-old prince. He's going to be sort of the middle-aged, balding prince that no one can remember. We're going to be all looking at Charlotte. Charlotte's going to be at Wimbledon with what glasses she's wearing, what hat she's going to be wearing. George, what's he going to do to support? He's going to be turning up at the football. Louis, mad dancing. This is the future. And I think this is the problem that's going to face Meghan and Harry.
No, I've got hopes for a reset. I've got hopes for a reconciliation. Wouldn't it be great for us to be writing something positive about father and son reconciling?
Yeah. Oh, no, I'd like to see, No, I would like to see the father and son only for because I believe the king deserves a bit of respect, and I don't think actually he's been shown enough respect in the last 3 years since he's been king by his son. I think he's been completely disrespected.
Yeah, I'd like to see a reconciliation, but at what cost? We need to not suddenly forget what's been happening in the last couple of years. Yeah. But of course, people want to see people being happy. But let's just not forget. At what cost? Needs to be apologies. There needs to be a change in attitude. But
see, that's what you get from a working royal.
I didn't joke. Thanks, Rob. Let's talk about the future. Yes. A potential, or not just potential, but a future working royal, Prince George. He turned 12 this week. It's not a major milestone. We normally treat like every 5 years or every 10 years or 21 for something. But 12 feels big for George. He's growing up. He looks tall in that video, by the way. He's towering over his siblings. But it's been a big year for him. Where do you think Prince George is at the moment, Rhiannon?
I just think it's so interesting to look at how he's increasingly being manoeuvred into some of those big kind of public moments. VE Day, I think, was a massive day for him. And I need to talk to you because you were in the room, weren't you, for that big tea party?
Yeah.
There's this amazing photograph.
It's great stuff, though.
Yeah, lovely photograph of Prince George shaking hands with a veteran.
You know, I used to buy into the whole Prince Harry is the rebel royal thing. The compassionate one. The one who actually gets it. Then I saw him in Malawi. And let me tell you, the public image? It's not the full story. This was during his big Africa tour. All smiles, press photos, and talk of legacy. But once the cameras backed off and we saw him up close, really saw him, things looked very different. He wasn't engaged. He wasn't respectful. Honestly, he was patronizing. And I'm not saying that lightly. So picture this. The helicopter lands. Everyone's waiting. Local leaders, community organizers, kids from the school waving flags. There's real excitement. Hope. Harry steps out. No eye contact. No real warmth. Just a nod, a wave, and a look like, let's get this over with. From the start, he acted like he was doing us a favor by showing up. Not the other way around.
And you just look at it and you just think, wow, this is future heir, but also future king in training. And while William and Kate obviously want to do it in a real softly way, it's inevitable what is coming down the tracks. And I just think at Wimbledon as well, he was there, part of the lineup.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting about George is he sort of reminds me of his dad, really. He seems a bit more serious than Charlotte, certainly Louis. He seems to kind of be thinking about what he's doing.
He's aware of who he is.
Yeah, there is an awareness.
I think also, I think that what is interesting is 12 now. We just talked about 5 years since Harry and Meghan left, okay? 5 years' time, he'll be 17 years old,
Yeah,
you know? It's going very, very quickly. We know that he's been getting a bit more independent. We also know that, you know, I think that in the past, you know, if you got to 12, the Queen laid it down that the heir couldn't, like William, couldn't fly with his brother, couldn't fly with the rest of the family. There's been a lot of rows about whether or not the family should be flying in the helicopter. We know he's growing up a bit more too. He's had, you know, he's at school. He would stay over at school. He'd be doing a bit of boarding at school. So we know that he's growing up. He's making his own position stronger. He's got a bit more independence about him. And I think that shows you his parents respecting who he is. It's a big decision coming up, what school he goes to next.
Yeah.
Will it be Marlborough College, where he could then link up again with Charlotte, if that's the case? Or would he go to Eton like his father? I think that's still to be decided. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was Eton because of the proximity, but equally I wouldn't be surprised if it was Marlborough College because of the influence on that his mum enjoyed that experience. So look, he's growing up rapidly, and I think that you can see things going. And he's had a lot of experiences. You know, he's been at the state funeral of the Queen Elizabeth. He's been at the coronation. He took an active part in the coronation of his grandfather.
At one point, a respected elder starts explaining a local farming project, sustainable irrigation, something they developed without outside help. Midway through, Harry interrupts to correct him. Loudly, confidently. And he was wrong. Didn't say sorry. Didn't even pause. Just moved on like nothing happened. Now, here's the part that really stuck with me. It wasn't just the locals who noticed. His own team was visibly frustrated. I watched one aide, professional, composed, literally mouth the words, "Are you serious?" after one particularly tone-deaf comment. Another assistant clenched his jaw and avoided eye contact the whole walk to the next stop. And just before we left, one staffer muttered under her breath, "We've briefed him 100 times." Her tone, pure disbelief. This wasn't a one-off. It was a pattern. One everyone around him saw, but no one could say anything about. There was one moment I'll never forget.
These are big experiences for a young lad to be really there at the front row, and he knows what's coming. But at the same time, what he has had with William and Catherine is a mum and dad that are protecting him and not having him have to overthink, which I think is fantastic.
But they are revealing more and more. over time. William and Catherine Neal had taken him to Wimbledon.
When you were in that room with them for VE Day, what was it like? Like, did they feel like a kind of protective force around him, or did it feel like they were saying, no, you need to spend your own personal time chatting to these veterans? I think it's fascinating.
No, it was great. So I had the rota, so I was very fortunate to have my name pulled out to do this job, and I didn't know Prince George would be turning up. But it was a large room in Buckingham Palace, and we had
lots of people,
30 or 40 veterans, all sat down having lunch, and the entire royal family clan moved in, from King to Queen, William, Catherine, Edward, Sophie, Princess Anne, and everywhere you looked there was a royal. And then George was there. We weren't expecting George, and what I saw was both William and Catherine kind of giving him a little bit of independence, where they would bring him into a conversation, or that William would often have his arm around George, but they would get him to the front to speak to a veteran, and I think George liked it because he got to talk about war and guns and submarines and tanks,
which guys were very young when they did all this stuff. So it's amazing you got that connection, isn't it?
Yeah, but I felt watching their parenting, I think, is really interesting because they understand the responsibility that George has to take on, and it struck me as an incredibly important job for George, almost like the first kind of major engagement, and it was a safe space because it was in Buckingham Palace, somewhere that he knows, and he was with all his family. And I say it wasn't just William and Catherine; there were lots of them. But I saw they were being very genuine, and they were just allowing George to talk to veterans and express his opinion, and I quite enjoyed it. Although everywhere I turned, I once tried to sit in Camilla's chair. I didn't realise that she was about to sit there. I turned around and almost stood on Prince Edward's foot. So in the end, I just had to disappear, realising I had no spatial awareness or peripheral vision, and hide in the corner.
A local conservationist, someone who spent their life protecting wildlife, offered Harry a handmade carving as a thank you. Simple gesture, deep meaning. Harry barely glanced at it, didn't take it, didn't say thank you, didn't even register it. Just brushed past like it was a distraction. And that right there, that's the moment it all clicked for me. This wasn't humility. It wasn't cultural respect. It was royal entitlement, plain and simple. Look, maybe he's changed. Maybe living in California made him more self-aware. Maybe he's learning. But I saw what I saw. In Malawi, he treated people like they were beneath him. Like they were lucky to be in his presence, even though he was the guest. And the worst part, the people still showed him kindness, respect, because that's what community looks like. So when I hear the glowing interviews and the media spin, I think back to that hot afternoon. That IG Nord elder, that embarrassed staffer. And I realize there's a side of Prince Harry that no one talks about, but it deserves to be heard,